The beach ball of death.
Yeah, on the Apple computers. There we go. We're rolling. Right.
Oh, I see.
The beach ball of death.
Hi, everybody. It's Darren Pratley speaking. Hey, it's great to have you with us again today. This is a fantastic podcast interview and one that I've been wanting to do for a while. And when I was talking to Jonathan, my good friend from over the ditch, about having this really important guest on right now as an important topic and someone that can give us some insight. So this whole topic today, I think, is one that we see out in the marketplace right now, and especially with these COVID times. So I really am excited about having this conversation with our special guest. But before we do that, I want to get Jonathan on here with me. Jonathan Creek, come and join us, mate. It's great to have you once again from across in Melbourne, and I'm really looking forward to our topic today.
We're having technical difficulties, Darren. Hold on. You've thrown something in there. Hello, mate. Sorry about the technical difficulties and the slow switching, but here I am.
Oh,
Welcome
good.
to you.
Yeah,
Congratulations on joining the club. I don't know if we're announcing that publicly, but by the time this gets out, you'll be over it. So.
True. Yes, no, I'm actually pretty good. I'm actually feeling okay. So, we just got to keep going and just can't do anything face to face, and that's all good. Zoom's great for that, and thank goodness the country and the world has actually got up to speed with actually doing presentations and conversations and meeting people now online. So it's actually makes it really easy to do that. So I just kicked all the staff home, and here's me.
Good.
Hey, our guest is talking before he's on. That's amazing.
Should we get him on?
You said that this is a great interview. Well, it hasn't happened yet, but there is certainly plenty of anticipation about the guy that we're about to bring on. I've met him once, thanks to you, virtually, and a wealth of knowledge that's really going to benefit our listeners and those who watch us on YouTube. So how about you introduce him, and I will push the buttons that hopefully make it work. What do you reckon?
Awesome. Sounds good. So our special guest today is the infamous John Shackleton. Now, John is somebody who in the UK worked in sports coaching for 7 years, was a very good specialist around the mental side of sport and understanding the mind when it came to performance. And that was where he really specialized his learnings. And then from there, moved into the corporate world, because as we know, the corporate world is very interested in the development of mental toughness and mental abilities to be able to cope with the stresses and strains of corporate life. And then 2003, John moved to New Zealand and became one of New Zealand's most prominent motivational speakers. And then 2012 had a serious bout with depression, and with his knowledge of the mind and how the mind works, I think it became a real puzzle for him of how that happened to him. And what he then set about doing was building a very, very clear understanding of exactly how this whole depression, stress kicks in, and also how it affects high performance. So I'm really excited to have you on board with us today, John, because you certainly have been a great person for me in terms of being able to be a mentor and someone who just enables you to steer the rudder of the boat and head you in the direction that we need to be going without falling into those chasms of challenge. So I just want to welcome you here on board today, and it's great to see you, mate.
John, welcome to the Blink podcast. Sorry that Darren gave you a 3.5-minute, 4-minute intro while you're sitting there looking like, what am I supposed to be doing? But welcome to the podcast. Thanks for coming along.
Loving it.
Tell us, John, a bit about yourself. The bits that Darren didn't cover, it's like he got your book of This Is Your Life and started to read it from page 1. Just give us a brief synopsis of where you're from.
It's a very small book, actually, very small book. Background in sports coaching, was a failed athlete myself, didn't quite make it, just a whisker off being international.
Which
got into coaching, swimming. Got into coaching, loved that, but realised that a lot of my athletes were making the same excuses that I'd made, and yet I thought they were super talented. And that got me interested in why the mind was actually the thing that was controlling their performance. So got into sports psych. Before there really was any sports psych. There was one course in the US that was available, but I had to write to America to get books over. This is before the internet, so I had to get books sent over from the US to study psych. And of course, in those days, it was just mumbo jumbo crap. Nobody would listen. The athletes would listen, but eventually the corporate world turned around and said, "Oh, I can see something's going on here. We better talk to him." So I got involved in training managers and salesmen, built a big business.
John, before you go, from a wider perspective, what do you think it was? What was the crux of it that made businesses all of a sudden realize that there was a power to psychology?
That's a very good question. I've never considered what made them turn around. I think that obviously their motivation is more profit. They'll tell you their motivation is to look after staff, but the truth of the matter is it's not. If they don't make more profit, then their share price drops. So they have to make more profit. And I think eventually they tried everything, better management, better conditions, more pay, blah, blah, blah. And eventually, as with everything really, the incremental changes and improvements got less and less and less. And they're still looking around for a way of getting an edge.
So there's no one company in the world that's credited with, hey, they went this way opposed to everyone else, and look at what happened. So now we all have to do it, because that happens.
No, not with psych, not with sports psych concepts. Yes, with the stuff that I do now. Yes, Google were particularly good in that area, but in performance, mental state performance, no, there wasn't one company that I was aware of anyway.
Okay, interesting.
Because I think one of the things, John, is if you talked mental state in a sports sense, every athlete would say to you that is a huge part of life, right? Is your ability to put yourself in a mental position to be able to perform at the best. Because in many cases, you can train for 4 years, 8 years, or even a whole part of your life where only one small moment is going to matter. And if you
10 seconds.
Yeah.
10 seconds.
If you're stressed, worried, anxious about that 10 seconds after having trained for 8, 10, 12, 20 years, guess what? Your performance ain't going to be great online, right? So
we've all experienced that, whether it's in sport or whether it's in business. We've all experienced that. When this thing isn't working properly, then we screw up.
Yep.
And the thing about sport is there's no money involved, but it's incredibly public. Everybody's seeing it, watching it, noticing it. And therefore failure, well, what they call failure, you come second. That happens to be second in the world. How we can describe that as failure, God only knows. But you come second, nobody remembers second apparently, and you failed.
See, I'd argue for some people there is money involved, because sport is so much a business now, right?
Nowadays, that's very true. Yeah. But only right at the very top of sport. Only literally the top 1% are making any money. It's probably less than 1% actually.
Yeah. So let's just go off. Let's just sidetrack for a little bit. I think probably one of the most widely spoken about public scenarios, maybe you guys in New Zealand aren't getting as flooded with it as us, is Ben Simmons in the NBA. Number 1 draft pick, best defensive player in the NBA. He's on a $140 million a year contract. Doesn't play. Takes a year off because the coach said about him in the finals the year before that he didn't go hard enough. Takes a year off. Gets traded to a new club in an incredible deal where he maintains his money. Still doesn't play.
Well, I don't know the guy and I don't know the situation, but you can understand that the pressure is just too high on him. I can see that a lot. The pressure is too high on an individual and they can't perform. So rather than perform and screw life up, the coach doesn't put them on at all. One of the great,
just to clarify,
I believe on all of that. Sorry,
just one asterisk so we don't get in trouble. Maybe he's injured.
Maybe
he's injured, and it's not all mental.
But isn't that? But this is the thing that often we see all the time, right? Is if you are not confident to perform, if you haven't done the work, if you haven't, you're not going to give your best. Some people's easiest out here is to pull the ripcord, right? Is to pull the ripcord, let the parachute go up, and actually, I'm not going to do this. I'm actually going to find an injury excuse or whatever it is. But I see this every day in business as well. You know, people are going to give themselves that.
If you're earning 140 million a year, you can take a year off, and nothing's really going to happen. You can afford to.
But the expenses on an athlete at $140,000 is a shitload more. So they have to earn a lot, right? 140 million, sorry. Yeah. But what I'm saying is, isn't that the challenge here, right? Is it's just whether it's a $140 million contract or a $25,000 commission on a sale, the same rules apply here, right? And I think that's the thing we've got to keep remembering, is that we just got to keep understanding how important this concept is.
I think one of the things to understand is that the pressure that guy's going through inside his head, because all stress is self-created. So the pressure that's going inside his head is the same type of pressure that the real estate agent will be suffering from when the market changes. Yep. It may not be quite as intense, but it will be exactly the same. Because we can make stress out of anything. We can make something. Part of my depression that I went through is crazy. I retired to New Zealand when I was 48, and yet my depression was based on my lack of money. That's absolutely stupid. There's no logic about the way the brain works. It's just that I looked at the concept and interpreted it myself as I've got no money, which is, I'm not a squillionaire, but, it's not true. I've got plenty of money. So it's how the mind works how it doesn't work. That's probably the best way of looking at it. When we're under pressure. When we're under pressure, it doesn't work properly.
Darren, we mentioned it in the last podcast, catastrophizing. I think that's a term that really comes into it. Even the other day I did a presentation. There were some tech issues. They weren't hurdles you couldn't overcome, but I was really clear at that point. I'm not going to let these worry me. I'm just going to push on. Right. Let's just go old school, set up a laptop, open up Zoom. All the other people interstate can log into the Zoom, and I'm just going. Like, tough luck.
You could say that not catastrophizing is a choice. Well, you could say that. The problem is, and this is where depression comes from, is that an individual gets into the habits of catastrophizing everything in the area they are concerned with. So everything becomes a problem, and it's a mental habit. So it doesn't matter. You take all the pressure off them. They just start thinking mentally in that way. So you managed to catch it, Jonathan, before it became an issue. But if it's happening over and over and over again, eventually it's like anything. You can't get out of the habit. It's like smoking. It's very difficult to kick the habit once it's there.
Look, I probably haven't shared this with the Blink podcast before, but I was at a point probably in around 2014 where I would do nothing for fear of it going wrong. So I would take my kids to school and I would sit in my front room of my house and just sit there all day. And then at 3 o'clock, I'll get up and go and pick them up.
Yep.
And it is crippling. It's crazy.
You get into that habit, and it's very difficult to see a way out of it when your mind is going around. I call them motorways. It's like the M25 around London. You keep going around it. You can't see an exit. You're traveling so fast, you don't see an exit. If you can slow down, there's hundreds of bloody exits. How do I stop myself in this habit? But we drive faster and faster and faster. And that's the world at the moment. The world is going faster. We think we have to run twice as fast to keep up with it. We don't see the exits. We just go round and round and round. It becomes a worse and worse habit.
So in that scenario where, say you'd spin, like I used to describe it as spinning, like I was just spinning, is it okay to make macro decisions and abandon some things and say, you know what? I'm thinking about it at the moment. I'm thinking about not playing grown men's sport because, if someone says something about me, I say something back that's probably a bit nastier. And then that's okay while I'm in the game and, I'm all up there and I'm prickly. But then as soon as I get to the car and the drive home, I go, you're a goose. Like, oh, yeah, what are they going to say
Well,
about you?
I
What are
think
going to people do? And I start catastrophizing about it, and I get home to my wife, and I'm so wound up I don't go to sleep. And so then I waste the next day because I'm too tired. And then I sit there and go, hockey caused me to waste the day. When it really wasn't. It was just the way that I was thinking in the car.
I think it's really, really important to get out of it. And when I went through my bout, I got completely out of everything I was doing because I didn't know what the triggers were at that point. I just stopped everything and I went and built a shed down the bottom of the garden. And that got me out of off the motorway, eventually got me off the motorway. And then I could start thinking straight.
Yeah.
But so, yeah, when you do fall off that cliff, when you go onto that race track that you can't, stop everything. I would definitely say stop everything.
Wow.
So let me ask the question.
Before Darren, I'm going to cut in. John, is your shed better than Darren's shed? Because Darren built a shed recently and it flooded.
I have never seen Darren. I don't even know if he actually built it. He told me he built it.
I think it was one of those kit ones.
Foundations.
I've got it's even got its own name.
So is mine. Mine's called Shack.
Mine's called the Taj Mahal.
But he forgot to put the concrete on an angle. So now the water just all sits in the floor and everything gets wet.
Yeah, I fixed that. It's amazing. It's amazing what a concrete floor does.
We're getting distracted.
Right.
We're getting off target.
Yeah, because that was actually a really good point where I was going to ask a really poignant question, and then you took me down the track of a shed, for God's sake. Right, okay. So here's my question, John, because I reckon one of the things that we've got to start being better at is our ability to recognize these traits or these signals in ourselves, right?
Yes.
Because the first place we need to start about mental health is look after ourselves, right? And I think the ability to recognize some cues or what are the things that are causing us to head down maybe these paths and sort of start looking for those exits off that motorway a bit earlier. What are your thoughts there?
You're dead right. You've got to be able to see the signs that you are dancing on the edge of the cliff. You've definitely got to see them. Most people will look at them and say, oh, well, everybody does that. The point is, yes, everybody is not everybody, but a lot of people are suffering right now. So you've got to understand that the signs that we see are actually very common. That doesn't mean they're not important. So the number one sign is sleep patterns. If somebody is having trouble getting to sleep or waking up at 2 o'clock in the morning with frantic head going blah, 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 that is a major, major sign. The second one would be massive mood swings. So you go from being Mr. Pleasant and Wonderful and suddenly lose it, usually with the people you love the most, because you can't do it with clients. So you lose it in stupid little situations. Somebody leaves the top off the toothpaste tube. Then mild addictions would be the next thing. Things like drugs and alcohol as an excuse to try and relax, a way of letting the mind go. You know, we use the phrase, I want to get out of my head. You know, people, you listen to teenagers, they're talking about getting drunk, getting out of their head. That's exactly what they want to do. They want to stop this damn thing from going round and round and round and round. So they get drunk because it stops the mind from working that way. So those are the three main areas I think we should look at. And if people are watching this podcast now and saying, shit, I've got all of those. Well, yeah, that's very true. Most of us did. I did. I was a bottle of wine a day at that time. And not enjoying that or the hangover the next morning. My sleep was absolutely atrocious. None of this, and I used to lose it with my family all the time.
Yeah, look.
But admitting those things and saying, right, those are the signs and I need to do something about that. That's the challenge, Darren. It's not actually recognizing, it's going, yeah, that's me. And I need to do something.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because otherwise, what will happen is if you don't do anything, like I did, you just keep going round and round that motorway, can't get off, bang, you fall off. And you're in trouble then.
You're singing from the hymn book here. Sleep, 100%. Sleep. The moment you're not getting the right amount of sleep or decent enough sleep, nothing operates properly. Like,
That's right.
it all misfires. Alcohol,
Yeah.
I don't drink it. Haven't for nearly 10, 15 years. I know that's boring, but
It's not just alcohol. There's other things you can get addicted to.
yeah, Pepsi Max.
No, I'm not. I'm not talking.
No,
You
100%.
can get addicted to pornography
Yeah.
on channel on YouTube and stuff. Not YouTube.
Rex,
on the internet.
YouPorn. What's your favourite one again, Darren?
Get
What's yours?
addicted to social media. Social media is another one you can get
I
addicted
haven't
to.
got time for that stuff, mate. I haven't got time.
Send us your most popular ones, Jonathan. We'll have a look.
I just haven't got time.
No, look, John, it's really not interested in any of that stuff, to be honest. But I do see online, and you get these people who are speaking about it, and they say, listen, you just, guys, if you're working from home or working from your own business, you're taking breaks to go and watch pornography 2 or 3 times a day. Yeah, it's distracting you. You got to stop it. There's like a couple of these guys who are those macho sort of army, get your life together, slap you in the face down the camera type blokes. They are big on get sleep, get exercise, journal, sit quietly, get off pornography, and moderate your moods. And I think this is, I think we always apply it to ourselves. Hockey makes me moody. All right. Like it does. Like there's always a peanut out there that I can find a problem with. And then when I come off, and I think what's happening is that I'm recognizing it afterwards as it's taking me back somewhere or giving me a taste of where I used to be a long time ago, and I'm not that person. And so I'm just going to find another pursuit, because this is the interesting thing. I've been to doctors, I've been to so-called experts, psychologists, whatever, medication, everything. And they say, don't give up sport. Don't give up team sport. It's your social outlet. It's this and that.
I think what they're probably saying is don't give up exercise, because yes, that really does help. But just doing exercise the competitiveness of exercise is where the stress comes. It's not the exercise, because an awful lot of professional athletes are suffering from anxiety and depression. It's the competitiveness that is the problem that's causing it, rather than the exercise. The exercise is great for you.
I'm incredibly competitive. I will swing from the fences in a game of 45D hockey just to make sure that we can get an extra inch. Like, I don't give anyone an inch. I've no. Anyway,
that's another of these signs, and that brings me back to the real estate problem. A lot of the real estate agents that I've worked with in the past, they're not concerned with how much they're earning. They're concerned with who they're beating. Who are they getting the business from? And it's that competitiveness that they get. It's another one of these motorway habits that you get into. Highly, highly competitive people. And real estate's a great industry for people like that. They've got every opportunity in something like that, haven't they?
And that's really interesting, because real estate as an industry, and I don't see other industries doing this, are so big on award seasons. Like every month, you're the top 50 in this area, you're that in your area, and like every post at the moment.
And here's the winner for the office, small to medium office, who has the most pot plants in the front waiting area.
That's right.
Here's the trophy. Oh, thank you so much. Oh, that was so good.
Yeah.
And now the winner for the office with the most pot plants in any reception area goes to... Oh, like seriously!
But this is interesting. If we were to be honest, real estate, and we don't want to pick on real estate, has got a bit of a problem with well-being and work-life balance and habits. Like, we all see these people who are struggling, and then on the flip side, there, it's like the industry's almost. You're saying the industry's almost feeding that by promoting competition so much.
I wouldn't blame the industry for it. What I would blame is you don't have to have these awards for somebody to be competitive. You take a top.
That's what I was just going to say. That's exactly it, right? And this is the other part.
Problem.
Yep. Here's the other part for me around this. I reckon that piece is for about 6% of the industry. So 6% of the salespeople fall into this category, all right?
Yes.
Because I reckon we've got 80% of the industry sitting there going, shit, if I do one deal this 6 months, I'm okay.
I'm happy. And I think the thing is, Darren, you're working with that top 6% because they're keen on getting better and better and better and better. Now, they're driving faster and faster and faster around that motorway, and eventually they're not going to see any exits. And so they're driving themselves, not all of them, but many of them are driving themselves into these problems.
See, I think this is where the change is starting to happen, and this is where this awareness, and this is why this topic is so important for me, right? Is because what I'm starting to see is that they're starting to realize now that they have to build businesses. So this is building a business in real estate, not being the lead agent who's flying around doing everything. You've actually now got a team that you build to grow a better business. And that for me is where the industry is moving. So our 6% are starting to realize, hey, I don't want to live my life like this, but I still want to be able to earn the levels that I am. So how do I build a better business? What do I need to do? So that's good.
I think there's a clarity here. If we're talking about a top performer setting goals, their goals should be about what they want to earn. Nothing at all about who they're beating. Nothing at all about the rest of the office. Nothing at all about the other brands. It should be just how big do I want my business to be and by when. And you will know, Darren, that you can't build stable, strong, big businesses overnight. It takes you a while. Right. And as you're slowly building it, you're getting stronger and stronger with the right habits. These fly-by-night people, they come into it, bang, they're absolute superstars, and very often, Milner Scudder, I think, is a great example of that, became a superstar and suddenly fell off the cliff because he couldn't handle the pressure so quickly. And I see that a lot in sport. I mean, listen, I don't know Milner Scudder, I'm guessing, but I see that a lot in sport, and I see it a lot in real estate too. Somebody rises to the top too quickly, can't handle it, falls off.
We see it everywhere. Like we see it everywhere, right? Look at tennis. Bernard Tomic, Nick Kyrgios. And Nick Kyrgios, I love Nick Kyrgios, and not for his behaviour, but for his honesty.
Talent.
Right?
Incredible talent.
But his honesty, I love his honesty. He's like, I don't have the capacity in my brain to actually go on and be number one. So you know what?
No realism. How's that realism?
I love him, right? He goes, I don't have the capacity to do that. I wouldn't handle it. I'll just blow up. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to hang around and be a pest all the way through to semi-finals and quarterfinals. And guess what, fellas? I'm going to make 20, 25 mil a year, and I'm okay with that. Why aren't? And he looks at the journalist and goes, why aren't you okay with that? Because I'm okay with that. Like, it's amazing.
Brilliant, actually. Brilliant.
I think it is too.
Yeah. So this is one of the things that I'm seeing right now. So we all know that the real estate industry, and we're talking about this again, but I think this right now is a really good learning curve for us because the market's changed, right? If you go back 6 months ago, what I would see was a lot of real estate agents having the market activity drive their businesses. So it was all about the market was driving their success. Whereas then all of a sudden you had a whole lot of agents that said, well, if the market's successful, I'll work harder, I'll do more, and that means I'm going to even be more successful. And then you had a whole smaller group that what they were saying was, actually, I'm going to build a better business, right?
Yes.
Now the market's shifted, right? Now the market shifted. Everybody in category one who was relying on the market to drive their business are now in a really, really bad space, right? Because I haven't changed, Darren. I'm still like I was, but my clients aren't ringing me. And I'm like, that's because they don't. This is not normal real estate, right? Normal real estate is where you have to go to the customer and build that connection. Those agents that built that activity and started to do more and more and more in their businesses, they're still doing okay because they're creating the opportunities. And the ones that have businesses, again, are still doing well because they've got the scale that they can keep pushing ahead, even though it's challenging times. But that headspace around each of those three categories is definitely having a big effect.
Yeah. I would have said that if I can refer to the business builders as slow and steady, would that be a way of, okay, mentally, those guys will outlive the other two.
Yeah, and that's what's happening.
Yeah, without any doubt. From a long-term perspective, that's the way to go, is to not expect to be a squillionaire next week.
And all those ones in category one.
Real estate promises. Actually, that's what
And
real
almost
estate promises.
that's when we talk about those awards. That's what happens in category one, right? The ones that drive the market drives it. They're next minute they're rock stars. They're top of the industry. They've got a Maserati because every great real estate agent has a Maserati, right? But as soon as the market shifts, right, that $1,800 a month to pay for the Maserati that goes out is all of a sudden starting to become a bit of a problem.
Yeah.
And they don't necessarily have the tools to fix it. And this is where the stress, the challenges, and it really starts to kick in. Because I think there is some real levels of stress that start to kick in, especially in that financial space or that perceived level of success that I should be earning. I should be earning this. And I think that's having a real effect at the moment.
But if the guy's if he's building a business, he will realize that business requires investment. So he might earn 200 grand this year, but he'll put some of it aside because he knows he's got to put some stuff around for next year. So building a business is the mentality we've got to have. Not becoming a rock star. Becoming a rock star in the real estate industry is actually the path for most of them is a path for destruction.
Mm. I think we're seeing some really valuable commentary around this type of stuff at the moment, where you've got really successful business people. Elon Musk, for example, first guy is going to reach $300 billion in value. Just gets around, talks common sense, right? Richest guy on the planet. And then you get these rappers who are only worth 300 million. And they've got their fast cars and stacks of cash and gold chains and I'm this and that and I'll buy your mum and whatever they do, right? And so what they're talking about is look at these quiet achievers, look at these business and industry leaders who are just kicking around in jeans and a t-shirt. And when you get the Wolf of Wall Street type guy who walks in, maybe he's got fancy shoes on. Right? Right, maybe. Sorry, Darren, I couldn't help myself. But, he goes in, he throws the European car keys on the table, I'm this and that. Oh, no, just put them away. Mrs. Creek won't watch anymore if you're showing
Maserati.
And, but then
Jonathan, you're not paying me in a good light here, man. Come on.
But then you got these guys who are coming in, they're driving their $60,000 eco-friendly car rather than their gas-guzzling Maserati. And, they're actually building wealth. Warren Buffett, great example, eats a cheeseburger every day because he knows how much it's going to cost. They've got their head
screwed on, haven't they? They've got their head screwed on because if you look at it, buying all the flash stuff is just going to spend all your money and you won't be able to retire like I have. You won't be able to retire in the future. If you build a business with the right structure and the right sense and not borrow, but just, drive your sensible car, then you're building something for the future, for your family, for the future, so that you've got the facility to be able to not kill yourself. And I think a lot of people have got that wrong in business too, that as soon as they start earning some good money, they splash it.
I think it's just awesome that that's becoming really cool. And
yes,
the one guy who pushes it a lot is Shaq, the basketballer. So Shaq has this thing where he talks, and he's on TikTok, and he says it all the time. He says, listen, the best advice I ever got in my life was he met some penny stock trading dude who said, real wealth, rich people will get their paycheck and they will put 50% aside and they'll spend 75% of it and keep 25%.
Yeah.
And he said, then you get the sort of wealthy guys who were half smart and they were 50-50. But if you want to build real wealth, invest 75% and live off 25%.
Live off 25.
And that's what he does with his kids. He doesn't let them have any excess. I think Bill Gates is the same. He's not letting his kids have any of his wealth, which I think is a bit sad. But if my dad did that to me, I don't think we'd be sitting across the table. But that I think the fact that that's becoming cool, that way of living, smart living, in a sense, is becoming what people are looking towards. I think that's awesome. And I think that should go a long way to relieving a lot of the pressures and expectations that young people coming into workforces are facing, or even people in the existing middle-aged workforce,
I think that there's almost like a dividing line here between those that understand that a lot of the things we've been talking about, that slow and steady, and this idea of actually not overstretching yourself, and this idea of keeping your mind quiet. There seems to be a part of society that understand that, but there's a massive amount of society, particularly the young, that I'm speaking as a 68-year-old, the young don't seem to understand that that's the path to success. I don't know whether everything's faster now, so maybe they're all looking to become squillionaires quicker than the last generation. But to be honest with you, I don't see that as a mentally stable way of doing anything.
Well, they're all getting a wake-up call at the moment because, there are blokes who have just lost $120 billion in crypto this week alone. So, these guys are the founders of Coinbase who build these crypto exchanges. How do you deal with losing $120 billion in a week?
That's
got to be rocking backwards and forwards. I mean, and I think
I get pissed off if I lost $120.
It's all scale. Right, gentlemen.
Let's go.
Okay, so John, tell me, what do you reckon the signs are that we need to be conscious of? Just some things. So you talked about the sleep. Yes. Talked about the
sleep, mood swings, addictions. And you got, people say, oh, well, I drink a little bit. No. That's what I'm really talking. When it becomes to the point where you can't relax without it. And that's not necessarily just alcohol.
Yeah.
Those are the biggest three. And the sleep one is there in almost everybody that I work with. The sleep problem is there with almost everybody. Not 100%, but quite high. I would say 90%.
So let's just say you've got the signs, because I think part of this is that stress component. And I think nowadays with the way, we're coming through the COVID environment, we're coming through a period of time when many businesses were hamstrung. We had a whole lot of people that were still having to spend a lot of money but weren't able to earn it. And that's created a pretty high level of stress, right? Have you got any insights into sort of how we can help and how we can start to level that out a little bit more? Because it's an area that I'm seeing a lot. And I think you are too, Jonathan, in terms of the crew that you're working with. It's just there's the sense of there is a level of stress there.
Yeah, so John, what I'm sort of seeing is that, particularly here in Melbourne, because we were locked down for so long and so hard and almost terrorised by a government, to be honest. I don't know if anyone outside Melbourne even realises that we had curfews put on us from 9 o'clock at night till 6 in the morning, and during those hours, they would fly Black Hawk helicopters over the suburbs. Shit you not, I've got videos of it, almost nightly, to make sure that you're not out driving around. Now, when those helicopters now move around, you can see people actually
they'll flinch,
shaky about it, right? So what I'm seeing is that, the way that I sort of picture it is that people's tolerance levels or stress levels are already set higher. Maybe it's at their ear. So if they get a little bit, it goes a bit higher, and a couple of little bits, and all of a sudden they hit a bit where they overflow. Where previously the stress levels were down around their nipples. So they don't have that gap to be able to cope with little stresses that used to hardly be a bump in the road. Now bumps in the road are tipping them over. Is that about right?
Let me tell you something. It's not about reducing the stress, because you make the stress. Each individual interprets the situation and creates the stress inside their head. So you can't go externally and change this and change that and change the other. What you have to do is learn how to change the mental habits that you've got. It's actually extremely simple. You've got to stop your mind from operating incorrectly. And you can't do that. What you actually have to do is the reverse of that, is you have to teach it how to operate correctly. You can't get rid of the negative. You have to give it a much better option. And the option is actually this concept which has been around for thousands of years. It's called mindfulness, and I thought it was hippy-dippy Buddhist crap when I first came across it. I honestly did.
Now,
and yet, actually, sorry?
No offense to the Buddhists out
No,
there who watch. We've got a
whatsoever.
big, John. We've got a big Buddhist following.
I'm sure. I'm
Big
sure.
Buddhist following.
But I actually thought it was rubbish, and yet what it does is it teaches you how to get your mind to not do that other stuff. You get it to do the gentle, quiet stuff. You don't do it all the time. You'd be lucky if you can do it for 5 minutes a day, to be honest with you. But by doing that, you give your mind an option. So if it starts to race around that motorway, what you've done by training it, you can very easily extract yourself from that motorway and get on the calm, quiet back road. And as soon as you've done that, the motorway is irrelevant now. It's gone. But that has to be done through training. You can't just, oh, well, I'll do that. It just doesn't work like that. You have to train yourself. So
you're saying that the brains are processing the signals wrong because you can't control the environment. You can only control yourself.
Well, you have created these bad mental habits. And we all have. We all create these ourselves. And when we find them, let's say the rushing mind, the mind that can't stop thinking, the one that wakes you up at 2:00 in the morning. When we've created that, our worst habit is we think that's successful, so we go back and do it again, and then we do it again the next day, and we do it again the next day. Suddenly, we've now got an addiction to that thought process. We can't get out of that. And if you're part of the 12-step program for Alcoholics Anonymous, they say you're always going to be an alcoholic because you can't get rid of a neural pathway. What you have to do is put new neural pathways in that your mind is attracted to, so it doesn't go down the addiction route that it used to go down. And you, Jonathan, you said it earlier. You can sort of smell when you're feeling bad. You can sort of smell it. Well, it's never going to go away. It's always going to be there. The point is, you know how to get out of it. And most people have no idea. And I had no idea how to get out of that. So I had to learn a whole new process. And now if I feel that mind racing thing coming on, I just put myself into a mindful state. I understand how to do that quickly now. Took a few years to learn it, and for many people, it takes a long time to rechange those mental habits.
One thing that I did, and I don't know where I got this idea from, but I just ended up doing it myself, I think, was because I used to stay awake a lot at night. I'd go to bed, I'd probably sleep from 10 till 1, and then all the way through to about 4 in the morning, I wouldn't be sleeping. I'd just be laying there like spinning. I ended up talking to my brain as if it was something separate to me. I'd say, hey, brain, I understand what you're worrying about, but it's not an issue. And it's not an issue we can change now because this doesn't happen until midday tomorrow. So shut it down. I'm telling you to shut it down, right? I'm your boss. Be quiet. Time for sleep. And as you said, it took time, but I started to improve my sleep. And the more that I started to improve my sleep, I think the more my body started to appreciate it. And it was like everything else ganged up on the brain to say, shut up. What
you're talking about is it's a technique called disassociation, where you have realized that this mind of yours is not you. You've stepped back from the mind and you've said, shut up. I don't like what you're doing. You're not me. These thoughts aren't me. There's some computer that I've got that's got a glitch, and I'm the one that's listening to the voice in my head. I am not the voice in my head. And funnily enough, that's what mindfulness teaches you.
That is one of the biggest things to get your head around, right? If everyone is listening to this thing today, if you can just get to grips with that simple concept that the voice that's playing in this head is not actually you.
Right.
I tell you what, your world changes overnight. Because I've been down this path, especially with this piece, in terms of performance part of it, and just to be able to have a stop for a moment. And John, you've helped me with this. Is just to be able to go, actually, just stop for a moment and listen to what you're saying to yourself. Listen to the voice in your head that's saying this, that, next thing. And actually, do you know what? 90% of that stuff isn't true.
It's rubbish as well. My mind comes up with some very repetitive. Same sort of shit every day. Excuse my French.
Yep.
Just same rubbish every day. It says the same things. And if you can learn to disassociate from it and observe it, And that's what the mindfulness techniques teach you to do, is observe the mind, listen to the mind, watch the mind.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's
Yep.
a lot of once you are actually able to do that, then you don't fall back into those bad habits. Or if you feel yourself falling, you can disassociate and watch the mind.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
It's
And I think that's key.
Go on,
I
mate.
think it's a great message, mate.
Yeah,
It is.
Absolutely.
John,
It's very. It's what solved my life. What saved my life. I'll be honest with you, because I was close to saying goodbye,
mm,
which is crazy, absolutely crazy. Because I've got a lovely life.
Yeah. So
no
John,
problem.
like in terms of getting to a bit of a conclusion for today, I just, is there 3 particular things that you would really recommend that a listener who's going, hey, I am feeling overstressed, I am starting to feel like I'm getting myself to a point where I'm starting to get a bit edgy about why I'm doing what I'm doing, or I'm starting to really have some struggles at home, or I'm
Yeah.
blowing a fuse regularly. What are some things that maybe some practical things that we can actually do?
Well, if you are close, right close to the edge, as I was suicidal, then stop everything. Literally everything. Stop everything, because you won't know what it is that's pushing you in that direction. So I stopped absolutely everything. I closed my businesses down. I stopped competing in swimming. I stopped everything, and I gradually put things back in. And what is it that's causing this? So I started training again in swimming, and oh no, I then got into races. Oh no, that's very competitive. I'll drop that. So I dropped out of that.
Yeah.
Slowly introduced stuff. The first most important thing you can possibly do is admit the problem to yourself.
Yep.
That is about 90% of the solution, to be honest. That
Right.
to actually admit that, yes, I've got a problem and I need some help. I would not suggest. I would suggest going to your doctor, and if the doctor can, or if the doctor prescribes something, then fine. Take his advice. I'm not saying don't, but my preferred route was to learn about this mindfulness stuff, which allowed me to be able to shut the problem down myself.
Yep. But I think the big thing message there is, if you're having the struggles and you know there's an issue, number one, realize the issue, but then go and talk to
Yes.
somebody to get some help, right?
Absolutely.
There's so much
If you
more
don't,
access.
and not one of these charlatans that suggest they're a guru and all of it. No, please get some serious help. Get somebody that is doing this professionally. And almost every therapist these days will at least be aware and will almost certainly be teaching you mindfulness techniques.
I think
They might not call it that.
I think your concept of taking everything out, like maybe don't necessarily close your business or stop working, because that might cause other stresses. But if you can
Yes.
take out the peripheral things, take some time out. How much time are you talking? It's different for different people. Or are we talking a month, 3 months, 6 months? How long are you suggesting? Is it just monitor yourself? What are we doing?
I think I shut everything down for about 3 months,
Yeah.
but I'm not saying that would be the answer for everybody.
No.
But
So
I
you
would
monitor
say
yourself, and
at
then you
least
put
for
in,
a couple of weeks, take all the pressure away.
yeah, and then you just start putting 1 or 2 things in and see what triggers you, and then you're almost
Well, by the time you come to at the end of a couple of weeks, you'll know. You'll pretty much know. But at the moment, unfortunately, people that are that close to the edge are not seeing the world properly anyway.
No.
They're a very distorted view of reality. And so if you take time out and just back off and go for walks, and the lockdowns were absolutely fantastic for a lot of people because they couldn't do all the stuff that they needed to do. I've had so many people tell me that they loved lockdown because it didn't allow them to go into frantic mode inside their head. They had to slow down. They had to learn how to quieten themselves. Not everybody felt that, but an awful lot of people who I've dealt with they went through lockdown and everything calmed down, and now they're saying, "Oh shit, it's building back up again." Lockdown was actually very good for them because it gave them time to reflect on where the pressures are coming from.
Yeah, I love parts of lockdown. I hated other parts where we weren't allowed to work here, and that caused pressures. But actually, the calmness of having my family around, no peak hour traffic, all those things, walking
Going
the
out
dog
into
more.
nature, walking, that sort of thing. Yeah.
It was amazing. Now, I know Darren has to go, so we probably have to wrap this up. John, one place where someone who is aware enough to know that maybe they've got something going on, one place where they can go and find a bit more information, a bit more knowledge that might actually help them self-diagnose in a way that's going to be enough to trigger them to go and get the help they need. Where do they go? Is there a book? Is there a website? What do they do?
Well, there's a huge number of books. You've got to be very careful. It depends a lot on an individual's thinking. For example, there's a lot of people who have a religious belief inside their head, and they would need to go in certain places because there are certain writings which will fit everything around their religious beliefs. There will be people who have no religious beliefs, and they need to go in a slightly different direction.
So does that make sense? So what's? I don't want to wrap it. We've got to wrap it up, but I don't want to undermine it. So step one. So what? Let's just help people with step one. What do they do?
Step one, I would suggest talk to some therapist, somebody like myself, or somebody that is working with individuals who've got this problem. Talk to a therapist. Yep. Number two, read. Get some books. Get the therapist's view on which books to read, but read about these concepts and how they can help the mind or help you disassociate from the mind. And there's lots of those. I could recommend many of those.
There's some great books out there, John. There's some really great books out there.
Who's that one there?
That's mine.
I haven't written one in this area. I've written, actually, on my website, there are 3 or 4 free ebooks that people can go and download for free, because it will cover the basics of what we've been talking about.
What's your web address? Let's get it.
www.johnshack.com. johnshack.com. Yeah.
Just like that.
And there's the only reason I wrote these was that it just amazed me how few people were actually recognizing there was a problem. So I put these. That's it. I put these little booklets together. One's about sleep. One's about
about there. Does that look right?
One's about sleep. One's about mindfulness generally. One's about I'm trying to remember what they're about. But there's 4 of them there that are free and anybody can download to get all the information. So,
well, it's been an awesome episode. Anything else you'd like to add, Mr. COVID, Mr. Pratley? Sorry. Oh man, I hope you don't get it as bad as I got it. I really do. I'm praying for
mate, I'm as tough as tough. Hey, John, I just want to say thank you so much. Your support and my journey has been incredible. Your ability to be able to sort of cut through all of the stuff is amazing, and just give us some clear focus on the things we need to be doing and aware of. So, hey, thank you so much for being with us today, and we're looking forward to having you again sometime soon.
JohnShack.com, people. John Shack, SHACK. Check it out if you need help. Thanks,
awesome.
guys.
Thanks, guys. Thanks very much.